Yes, on November the 1st, 2012, happened to be traveling on White House Road Extension toward Donaldson Center in Greenville. I noticed that there was a sheriff sitting on the offside of the road. I was traveling behind another vehicle. So I noticed that the first car passed the officer. He didn't do anything. I kept on driving. I went past the officer. He was still sitting in the same location. He didn't do anything at all. He didn't have any lights on or nothing, as though he was coming after anybody. So we just all kept on driving at the same speed. Got to the stop sign. I looked in the distance. He was driving towards us. Once he got up behind me, he turned his lights on. I was pretty much in a shock. I was trying to figure out what happened. Nonetheless, once the light turns green, we proceed. The other driver went straight. I made a right turn because I was heading towards Rockefeller Baptist Church. The officer then followed me, turned into the parking lot, and came up and said, "Sir, the reason why I pulled you over, you was speeding." I said, "The officer, come on, be reasonable. What justification can you give me for pulling me over versus the other driver?" He said, his response was, "I don't have to justify nothing to you." I said, "Officer, come on, be reasonable. What justification can you give me for pulling me over versus the other guy since we were both stopped at the stop sign?" "I don't have to justify nothing to you." So I said, "Officer, if that's the case, then you could do just about anything or say anything, and there's no justification. You could drop me out of the car, you could beat me, you could take me to jail, you could do anything at all you want to do, and there's no justification." He said, "Yes, and I can arrest you." I said, "For what?" He then looked at me and said, "For what you said." I said, "Well, officer, that's just justify my point, that you could do anything and there's no justification." It continues. He then looked at the camera, crouched as though he was picking up something out of his shoe, and lounged towards me beneath the level of the door and tried to grab me out the car. I then said, "Officer, what's going on? Why are you holding on to me like that?" His response was, "Oh, you're resisting. If you don't get out the car now, I'm going to tase you." He started counting. So I was a bit apprehensive there. I sat there, looked at him, and said, "Tase me for what? What did I do that deserve for me to be tased?" He kept on counting. "1, I'm going to tase you." He got to 2. I immediately jumped out the car. As soon as I got out the car, the officer looked at me and said, "I'm going to tase you." So first instant, I thought he was just joking or anything like that. But then he stepped back, told me not to move, and he was going to tase me. Somehow ended up leaned up against the car, and he deployed his taser. He stood and looked at the taser as if to say, "Hey, this didn't work." And I could hear him talking to an officer on his radio. Officer asked him if he wanted to wait until he gets there. He said, "No, I have this under control." He then proceeded towards me and said, asked me to go around. I had turned around, face my car, put my hands behind my back, which I did all of that. And of course, the argument went back and forth, me asking him, "What's this for? What's going on here? Why am I being arrested?" He just kept on doing his thing. So he got me in handcuffs and everything, got me in the back of his car. While I was in the back of his car, he now proceeded to give me the justification as to why he pulled me over. Telling me that I was a second car. It was easier for him to pull me over versus going around me to get the guy in front of me. So you could hear my voice saying, "Really? We were about to stop at the light then?" And then he said, "Well, you all are going 52. You could hear my voice saying, "How could I be going 52 when the guy was in front of me?" So nonetheless, he still proceeded to arrest me and everything. Other officers came, searched my car, didn't find anything in there. I was then told that he was going to pound my car. So they got me to the station eventually. A couple of days later, went in, got an attorney, requested the video. And lo and behold, that video, I didn't get to see that video until around the 23rd of February, which is almost 4 months. And I did some questioning. I was told that that video should be available within 2 weeks. Mr. Henry then called me and said, "The video is in, you can come in and look at it." As soon as we got there, we started looking at the video. Within 4 seconds of the officers started talking, I said, "Hey, there's something wrong with this video. That's not the tape from the arrest." The attorney then stopped and said, "Do you want to continue? Do you want to keep looking at this, or do you want to stop every so often?" I said, "You can continue, but there's still something wrong with this video." We continued looking at it. When it was through, at a stopping point, he said, "Isn't that you? Isn't that your voice? Isn't that your car?" I said, "Yes, sir, but there's something wrong with this video." His response was, "Even if you think something is wrong with the video, you can't go to court and tell them that they won't take your words for it. You have to have an expert to look at it. It could cost you up to $6,000. I don't think you want to spend that kind of money. You need to just go ahead and get a PTI program, get involved in it, get it done. They wipe your record clean and everything. And it's been an ongoing issue ever since. We've looked at this from many angles. Just about everybody who looks at the video knows something is wrong with it. The conversation has been changed totally, even though it's a flowing conversation now on the tape, and that's one of the arguments they try to say, well, there's nothing wrong with it because it's a flowing conversation. But obviously, everything has been changed just so he could basically justify his reason for doing what he did when there was no justification in what he did. Something of great importance here is that the conversation the officer and I had is totally gone. The word justification was used many times as I asked him for what justification can he give me for pulling me over versus the other guy since I was traveling behind somebody. His response was, I don't have to justify nothing to you. Officer, if you can't give me any justification, then you could do anything, and there's no justification in what you did. So the word justification was used many times, and nowhere in this video that the word justification is even mentioned. The first thing to note here is that when the officer came up to the car, he opened up the door and stepped back. We were still having a conversation about justification and everything. And then that's when he said, I'm going to arrest you. He then looked up at the camera and crouched as though he was picking up something out of his shoe, and then lunged towards me beneath the level of the door and tried to grab me while I was still sitting in my car. Yes, there's also another part of the conversation which is also missing when we had a discussion about race. While we were traveling, I said, officer, where are you from? His response was, that's not important. I then said, officer, are you prejudiced? His response was, guy, you don't know what I am. I'm not white. I'm Latino. I then said, officer, race has nothing to do with this. Being white or race has nothing to do with this. Anybody can be prejudiced against anybody. I think the main reason why you pulled me over was because of the car. That's missing also. It's now being replaced by with you hearing me crying for my hand, my risk, my risk, my risk. My understanding is that once you request the police dashcam video or footage from the arresting officer, it's supposed to be available within 2 weeks. I didn't get to view this until almost 4 months later, which was the 23rd of February. That's when I got a chance to view it. I think Mr. Henry called me a day before that to say it's ready for me to come in and view. That in my estimation, gives anybody ample time to do any form of manipulation they want to do. Once I viewed the tape, I realized that something was definitely out of place. The tape shows me getting out the car. You could hear the officer coming up to me. Go ahead, turn around, face your car, put your hands behind your back. And it's as though I refused to do that. So he then backed up and deployed his taser. After which you hear the word taser being yelled out after the taser was deployed, which clearly didn't happen in that order. On the tape, you can see the taser coming out, hitting me on the jacket, and then you hear him yell out the word taser afterwards. While he was putting the taser in the holster, the taser was still running while he was still trying to hold on to me, which never took place. In the initial tasing, he stood his ground, yelled out the word taser, and then deployed his taser. On the video, it shows the officer putting the taser back in the holster, whereas you hear the audio of the taser itself still running after he puts the taser back in the holster. This clearly points to the fact that something has been manipulated. My lights will only come on whenever the door is open, and it comes on within 1/10 of a second. This was something that was done by the Mercedes-Benz technician. I took my car there, they did a thorough check on the electrical and lighting system of the car. In the video, there are frames where the light would come on and then go off the next frame. 8 frames later, it would come back on. The front door, specifically, once it's open, the light comes on within 1/10 of a second. In the video, it shows where my lights were on for 3 seconds before the door opened up. In the video, while the officer was counting down, it shows an image or somebody coming out the car. That wasn't me. The person came out, went back in, came back out again. I came out of the car in one shot, straight out of the car. I didn't go back and forth once the officer started counting down. I was there on that day when this arrest took place. I knew exactly what was said and what happened. I was convinced, and I'm still convinced even to this day, that my story was nothing but the truth. However, I was told that I would have to get an expert to verify or to prove this, which I did. This has haunted me from day one, ever since it happened. There are times I'll be driving on the road. If I see an officer in the distance, I'm pulling over, getting out of his way, for fear that I might be pulled over and be tased again. I'm stressed out most of the times. Sometimes I'm at home. I don't even communicate with my wife, just thinking about the horror from all this. And it does really put a lot of strain on me. And one of the main things that does this is the fact that I was there, I knew what happened, and for some reason it's hard to convey it or to get people to believe the credibility of the story. And no one wants to believe that the police would edit video. Again, I say, I was there, I knew what happened. And when I look at this video and see something totally different or hear a different conversation, it blows my mind. Overall, my wife wish that this would go away so we can return to a normal life. She knows I spend a lot of time talking to people on the phone about it, stressed out about it, lose sleep over this incident. And it has really put a lot of stress on our relationship, our marriage. The kids, you can tell they're not too thrilled with it, with what's going on either. So it has really put a lot of stuff on us. It's been haunting us from day one. I know for a fact that ever since this had happened, or since I cried about the injustice about this whole incident, my phone has been tapped. Again, my name is Beek, and it's real bothersome to know that the Greenville County Sheriff Department in South Carolina would go to such a length in manipulating a video based on a normal traffic stop. I was tased, jailed, and arrested just for driving down the road. And to think about the fact that here it is, I'm a honest, hardworking, tax-paying individual here in the United States, for them to do something like this, it's just bothersome.